am here with Jordan Gorfinkel, known as Gorf, who is a cartoonist, musician, writer, and producer, has the company Avalanche Comics Entertainment, has done many things. Honored to talk with you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first, I want to ask you a question that I've never asked before about Superman and Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. What can the history of superheroes teach us about Pesach, about Passover? And what can the history of Passover teach us about superheroes?
That's an excellent question. And the reason that Rabbi Shmuly is asking that is because my latest book is the Passover Haggadah graphic novel. And my background is that I was the editor of Batman comics for the better part of a decade. And my next door neighbor was Superman. So although I'm Superman once removed, as we say. So the quick answer is that superheroes have a lineage that is directly connected to Judaism. The creators of the comic book format, of the comic book medium, were Jewish themselves. And they conceived of a storytelling format that to me strikes me quite a bit like the kind of Jewish storytelling that we do, both in terms of having grounding in facts and also building it out into community. So when it comes to a holiday like Passover, for example, that focuses on Moshe Rabbeinu and covers the 4,000-year history of, everything that you can imagine in Judaism, right? It's theology and philosophy and scholarship and Agadah homiletics. Is that how you would translate Agadah? And of course, a festive meal, right? If you have to summarize Passover, it's they try to kill us, we survived, let's eat. So when you have all those coming together, it seems like only natural that you would relate the quintessential Jewish storytelling medium of comics or sequential storytelling with the storytelling Seder, the ritual of bringing people around the table to retell the story.
So why did you write this, and what's unique about this?
This is the first time that sequential art has been used to not only just tell the story of Pesach, because I think that there's a bit of a misunderstanding standard. I want to say hello to AJ Frost, who has arranged my being here, and he's off camera, but thank you, AJ. I'm sorry, ask the question again. I got distracted by AJ's beauty.
Why did you write this book, and what does it have to offer that's unique?
Thank you. Okay, so there are illuminated Haggadah, meaning there are text and pictures that in some way complement each other, but this is the first time that you have the fusion of words and pictures together so that each provides context for the other. So if I can give you an example, let's just open up to a random page over here. This will be good. Let's do this because that's a very familiar story. So as you can see, we have, oops, I dropped my very priceless bookmark over there. So as you can see over here, we have the original Hebrew. We have transliteration because we want to make the story as universal as possible, universally accessible as possible, and not everybody has a command of Hebrew, even some of the most educated people. And then you have our new translation written by David Olivestone, he of the NCSY venture fame, that is built into the art. So that way, once again, you can read the entire arc of the Seder, the Haggadah, on this side. You can have a utilitarian version of the Haggadah on this side to be able to fulfill your mitzvah. And if you bring them together, then truly, for the first time, you are fulfilling the mitzvah of seeing yourself as if you were coming out of Egypt right now. Literally, you're seeing it as if you're coming out of Egypt right now because it's all there in pictures and dialogue.
So is the idea, if I were to ask you, how could we better fulfill the mitzvah and more deeply engaging the experience, it's the sense that the intertwining, that the visual experience creates a deeper sense of reality. Is that what you would say?
Yes. In fact, you're hired. That's excellent. Yeah. That's exact. Now, I would never say it as nicely as you just did it, and I'm going to take notes on this podcast later on.
We should see ourselves as if we're coming out, and to do that, we need creative ways to see ourselves there.
Right, and that was the point that I was trying to make before as I was starting to get warmed up, which is we often think, Passover is the story of the Exodus, but it's not the story of Exodus. It's actually more like a Wikipedia page, if you will, or a Cliff Notes, going back a little bit, of all of Judaism. So how do you take a work like that that is 2,000 years old and was written at a very different time for a very different audience than ours, and truly make it accessible. Well, if you bring the Jewish conception of comics or sequential art to it and combine the two together, then you're both reverential towards the original source material, but at the same time you're bringing it into the next generation with the medium that they would enjoy consuming it.
Are you the only religious Jew in the world of comics, or is there any culture out there beyond you?
So I'll tweak what you said a little bit. I know many people who are religious, but not necessarily observant. So I am one of the very few observant Jews who is working in the comic book industry, but there are several others. In terms of observant Jews who have been at that madrega, that level of running the Batman franchise, I'd be hard pressed to find somebody else.
Why do you think that is? Anything in our education system isn't being stressed?
That's a very good question. I am a visual thinker, and I sense that you are as well. And I think that because we have limited funds and resources, particularly in smaller communities, and we're in Phoenix, Scottsdale right now, and before we began, we were even talking about what are the schools and what are the educational possibilities. Well, let's face it, when we have only a certain number of kids and a certain amount of funds, then you need to hew to the center. And for people like me who may not be the test-taking, learning by rote kind of student, it's a bit of a challenge.
Right. I think we sometimes, in the observant community, struggle to break out of models that may be important in some contexts. Submission, reason, logic, text study, all great things, but into the realm of creativity and expression can sometimes be lacking, is my experience.
Yeah, I would say that it's not lacking so much as it doesn't have a means for expression overtly. So I always like to say that everybody is creative. They're just creative in their own way. So whether you're a plumber or you're a lawyer or you're a doctor or you're a Rav or you're a comic book guy, everybody has creativity. You're bringing your perspective through your creativity, your lens of creativity, to that discipline. So in school, I think there's a great deal of creativity as well. But if you're talking about specifically the dramatic arts or but I've been to some wonderful Jewish institutions that have that. I'm trying to think recently. I was at Ramaz, for example, on the Upper East Side of New York, which is a modern Orthodox day school. And I'm just blown away by all the resources that they have. And there are other schools as well. I just came from Los Angeles, so on and so forth. So I think the challenge really is to recognize that there will be children who will be more on the outskirts of education in terms of the way that they process, and how do we support children like that given the limited resources.
Right. Last question for you.
Yes.
One chidush that comes out of this Haggadah, one new insight that you feel particularly connected to or want to share at this moment of how we can think of the story in a different way.
Okay, so let's hold up one specific page over here. I like to call the back section, so the way the Haggadah is structured is you have the Magid section, which is the storytelling section. It's everything that precedes the meal. Then after the meal, everybody's right, because you're heavy, it's late, heavy with food and so forth. So I call that the boring section or the skip over section. So for me, one of the most important sections to actually illuminate was the quote unquote boring section. And I think that this is probably one of my favorite pages, the Kilo Na'eh Kilo Ya'eh page. And we used a combination of imagination and the source text to combine it into a world of wonder. And I'm not going to read it to you right now, but I would say if you pick up this Haggadah and you flip to this page, you will really fulfill our essential goal, which is, once again, to be able to use this quintessentially Jewish medium of storytelling, of sequential storytelling, to bring out the context of the words, and likewise the words to bring out the context of the drawings with imagination, with creativity, to spark conversation, to enjoy a gorgeous work of art by Israeli artist Erez Tzadok, credit where credit is due, so on and so forth.
Awesome. Well, Yasher Koach, really inspiring to hear about your work.
Thank you.
Check out the Passover Haggadah graphic novel. Thank you very much, Gorf.
Pleasure.